bolts on there. Neutral. Come on, baby. There we go. Reverse. It's kind of tough to do without the bolts snug down on there. Alright, back in neutral. And we want to make sure it's left at neutral when we install this. So we'll leave everything at neutral. So everything shifts properly and we're good to go. Again, that's just a test on the shifting the gears. So we are almost ready to go. Next thing to do is just put on the side cover and install it. Okay, last thing we've got is the side cover, and we're ready to install the transmission. Almost. We've got to put on the housing, the drive shaft thing there, flange in the back. But we're going to put on the side cover. But before I do that, you can see we've got just two more gaskets left, one for the remote tower, and then this little donut right here, this little donut guy right here. This one is if you had a reverse switch on your remote tower, your gear shift remote tower. This early MGB for the 63 does not have that, so I'm not going to worry about it. So again, clean the surfaces with rubbing alcohol on the final. Take your gasket, offer it up. This one will go on in only one way. Make sure you get it oriented correctly. There we go. That. Okay, now we're going to put on the side cover. But what you'll need to know is on your bolts, you can see I got it laid out here. Make sure that this bolt hole here is the one for the fiber washer, and I've cleaned that up as well. So this one has the fiber washer on there, and the reason is it goes all the way through the gearbox. This bolt does. So that fiber washer seals that up. We're going to offer up the side cover. And we'll start with these. Make sure that you have these little lock washers, special ones for these top three here. Make sure those are on there. And we'll just put this on here. Alright, again, the fiber washer one is this guy right here. I'm not going to bore you with putting all these bolts on here for you. But again, we're just going to put them all on, snug them down in crisscross fashion, and then do the final torque on them in a crisscross fashion also. Again, aluminum casing, aluminum housing, don't need to torque it down that much. So just do like that and you should be good to go, and that's all there is to installing the side cover. Okay, so just to finalize, when you torque these guys down, just do them in a crisscross pattern, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. Aluminum cover, so we're not going to really crank on it, torque it down. And then just use your big screwdriver to torque these guys down, along with the crisscross sequence. So, and again, this one is your bolt with the fiber washer, plain washer, and then a locking washer. Rest of them have locking washers on all the bolts. And these have the special lock washers on them as well for those guys. And that's basically it for the side cover. The only thing left we have is the rear flange. Putting the rear flange on the end of the gearbox here. That should be about it. Okay, now I'd like to go over how to install the third motion shaft flange. I'm going to be going on here. What I like to do is go ahead and I just put on a light coating of grease on the splines here, a little bit on the outside here, and then inside here on the flange. And if you disassemble some of the gearboxes I've seen, these guys can kind of lock up on there. So I put some grease on it, and then also on the threads here, some anti-seize on the threads. So we'll put some of that on here. Scoop it on there. That's just what I like to do. So you can do it if you care to. I would recommend it. This guy gets a lot of stuff kicked up on it. So there we go. So that's that. So all I gotta do is just put on the outside flange. And we'll slide it on there. Get in here just in a second. Okay. Now mine was very tight. As you can see, so just make sure it goes on properly. And I'm just going to use a rubber mallet to bang it on. Okay, so now I've got it almost all the way going into this rear seal here. And beforehand, I forgot to mention, I lightly coated the seal in there with some oil. And I'll go ahead and put some on this outside surface here. Go ahead and put some oil on that guy. There we go. I'll knock her all the way home. There she is. Okay, we've knocked it on pretty much all the way through, and now what we can do from here is just go ahead and a little bit of the grease oozing out, so I'm just going to go ahead and wipe that up a little bit. Okay, so here we go. So that's installing that. Okay, next we're just going to put on the lock washer onto the assembly, and the nut. You can tell which side of the nut's been against the lock washer. It's got a little bit of grind on it. So we'll just put this on. Alright, that baby's on there. Now this guy's going to be torqued down, and I'm going to get it set up on the ground with the with my bar assembly on here so I can torque this nut down. Okay, now we're going to torque down the flange nut. And in the Haynes manual, I couldn't find it in the MGB workshop manual, the torque spec on it, but in the Haynes manual, they call it the drive flange, 150 foot-pounds of torque. Now what I did find in the MGB manual for the automatic transmission flange, 50 to 60 torque pounds. So I'm going to go with 150 foot-pounds of torque to put on this guy. So we're just going to crank her down. There we go. Got a torque wrench here. Good thing about if you don't have a torque wrench is if you can go to a local parts store, they rent tools for free. The one we have locally around here, you can get a torque wrench for rent it for free. So use a torque wrench, pop it on there. Okay, you can hear that one click. That's about 150 foot-pounds of torque right there. And you can see my setup, same as how we took it off. This is a different one. I've got a piece of angle iron here, heavier duty than that aluminum piece I had earlier to take the nut off. But the same thing. I just cut it out, drill some holes on it, and that's all there is to torquing down the outside flange nut. And that should do it for that guy. Okay, that about does it for the rebuilding of the MGB gearbox. This is the MGB gearbox, or MGA, just a little bit of difference as noted in the DVD earlier in the film. But some final things. As you know, you're going to put this back into the MGB or MGA. Again, for your remote tower, just make sure you put oil in here and on the bushing. Put the remote tower on, grease on the gasket. and final prep rubbing alcohol to clean the surface. And you'll be doing all this through the tunnel, and just put the gasket on the remote tower, just torque down the bolts to spec. I don't think there is a spec on them, but just crank them down about yay tight. There's your outside flange. And you can see on mine, I went ahead and painted mine so it's easy to bolt it back up correctly with the drive shaft. New bushings, go ahead and put your new bushings in while you got it out. New transmission mounts while you got it out, all rubber. Might as well go ahead and replace it. On the again on the before you go to bolt it to the engine, just go ahead and clean this clutch release bearing with rubbing alcohol to get any oil or grease off of that. You don't want any oil or grease on the clutch release bearing. And then we're going to put a little light coat of grease on where the pilot bearing is going to slip into the pilot bearing here on the shaft, first motion shaft. And also on the splines here, a little light coating of grease on the splines here, and if you can get your finger in on the clutch disc itself, put a little light coating of grease there. So that's about it for this. Make sure you got your little guy here, very important engineering piece. And that's basically it. Just check your facing here, make sure nothing's nicked or gouged. It's going to keep it from torquing down onto the engine case. And that's basically it for the MGB gearbox rebuild, or MGB gearbox rebuild. I hope you've enjoyed it. It was fun to rebuild these things, and as you can see, there isn't too much to the rebuild on these guys. I've used common household tools, normal tools, and some engineered creative thinking tools to drive on stuff. So think outside the box. You can do it yourself. It's not that difficult, as you can see from the DVD. Thank you.